Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight I want to welcome Alan Stivelman. He is an Argentinian filmmaker developing both in fiction and documentary film. His first film, Humano, has had more than 3 million viewers worldwide and has been translated into more than 7 languages and is available on Netflix. His new film, Witness of Another World, is an emotional story of a gaucho who at the age of 12 had a supernatural encounter that changed his life forever. It was premiered in cinemas in Spain, Paraguay, and Argentina, being the most watched documentary of the year. The film will be released on all major streaming platforms on October 22nd. Alan, welcome, and thank you for so much for joining us. I know it's very early there.
Hello, Chris. Thanks for having me.
This was an amazing film. It was such an emotional film, and it takes you not only through Juan Perez's extraordinary encounter, but how it affected his entire life. And it takes you through an amazing transformation after you go to see him. Alan, I'd like to know a little bit more about your background and then how you came to find this extraordinary case.
Well, I'm a filmmaker. This is my second movie. I was new in the UFO phenomenon field. I came into thanks to the story of Juan Perez, and I met him by a chain of synchronicity. It was 2013, and I was writing a script. I was doing automatic writing by that time, a technique from the surrealists. And while I was doing this, I stopped this script when I had 30 pages. And I was writing a story about an abduction, a couple that was abducted by some entities, outer space. And then I realized that I was writing this story that I wasn't part of these supernatural things, so I have to start. So I started to read plenty of books about the UFO phenomenon, the abduction phenomenon, and then I bought a book that it was sold out 15 years ago. It was a book about abduction cases from Argentina. It was written by a psychologist and a psychiatrist. And it was quite interesting because in one of these chapters, they spoke about the Juan Perez case. And I think it was 1 year after, I was in Rosario, a city near Buenos Aires, and I was presenting in the cinema my previous movie, Humano. And in the audience, it was there Dr. Néstor Berlanda, one of the authors of this book. And I was having his book while I was chatting with the audience. So he came after I finished my speech. He came after me and said something like, "Why do you have my book? It was sold out 15 years ago. This is not by chance. I'm here, you are here, you're having my book. Let's meet each other." So the next day we went for a pizza, and while he was explaining me that one of the most significant cases, it was the Juan Perez case, he showed me a video, a small footage of Juan trying to explain what he saw when he was 18 years old, and he was in the middle of Congress, UFO Congress, and he was trying to explain what he saw, and immediately after he started to cry, he broke down, and I felt something very strange while I was seeing that footage, because it was my first time that I was witnessing a witness of a spectacular encounter, of a supernatural encounter. And I said to Dr. Néstor Berlanda that I wanted to meet Juan. And 4 months later, we went to the countryside. I met Juan. It was a wonderful experience for me. And 4 years after, I was doing this project.
Now, can you give us a little bit of a backstory on Juan? He is a gaucho, which is basically a cowboy that lives
Yes,
very remotely in Argentina, right?
right. Yes, he's 52. Um, do you want to explain a little bit about what he saw, about his experience,
We'll go into
or?
that a little later. Just give a little bit about Juan himself, just a little bit about his background and family.
Well, he was raised in the countryside with his family. He has seven seven siblings. His father was very strict, very severe with him, and this happened to him when he was 12 years old. He was a very shy person. After this contact, he started to have premonition dreams, and also he received mockery from his friends, from his family. And that's the reason why he like ran away from his house and started to live through different haciendas.
Now, in the beginning of this film, you can tell that he is profoundly traumatized by this event, and it has affected his entire life. What did you see from him whenever you first met him?
I saw a broken man, a very big and brave man from one side, because Juan is quite big. And you wouldn't you won't say that he has a trauma the first time you met him, but after some minutes, if he opens you, like started to share his feelings, his thoughts, you will start to perceive that something is wrong with him, because 5 minutes after that I've met him the first time, he started to cry, trying to explain what he saw, that the, what he has is not good nor bad, but is like a nightmare. He's living like a living hell, because remember that the immediately after that this encounter happened, Juan started to have premonition dreams, precognitive dreams, that it was something that it was really hard for him to deal with. Um, but my sensation was that I was in front of a very innocent man. He was purely hard. He was looking at me like asking for help, but he didn't know how to ask for it, because the most profound question that he was asking to himself was, why this happened to me? Why to me? And I took that question, and 4 years after, I was able to make this movie. But before that, I had to read plenty of books. I had to prepare myself to deal with the contactee, because I was dealing with a human being, with a person, with a soul, with with fears. It was not a regular movie for me, because one of the goals of this movie was to try to get answers for Juan, try to relieve him from his pain.
A big part of his trauma seemed that he felt like he couldn't talk to anyone about this. He felt, I guess, like they would be ridiculing him or something.
Totally, and that's a good appreciation, because but that time, well, his whole life he thought that he was the only one who had this kind of encounter or capability, because he never met another contactee, he never read a book, he never saw a movie of science fiction. He was really seeing that he was around him, or around his hometown or his family. He thought that he was the only one who had this kind of experience. So that was another kind of topic that mm, Juan felt that he was, yeah, the only one who had this issue.
And that's another thing. He's in such a remote area, and he doesn't have access to a lot of this science fiction movies and TV and magazines and stuff like that. And he definitely wasn't researching this stuff, right?
Right, right. And also there is a good detail that if you read the original reports from these researchers from Venado Tuerto, his hometown, you will see that Juan, the whole time, he thought that he was seeing farm workers. And instead of a UFO ship, he used the word tractor because he thought that he was seeing a tractor or a house of workers. That's why he didn't feel that he wasn't afraid of what he was seeing, or that's the reason why he was so brave and crossed this fog and enter this UFO ship.
Well, that I guess should bring us to the event. Let's talk about what happened to Juan when he was 12 years old.
Well, it was 6 in the morning of September 6, 1978. Juan leaves his house to go in search of the herd of horses to begin the task of the field. And before going to school, Juan had strict tasks to do. His father was very severe with him. Juan rides his horse Comet and gallops a few meters until suddenly three lights in the sky began to dance like frenetically. His horse was scared. He did not want to move forward. So Juan returns home and told his father, like, Father, there is three lights in the sky. And his father ignored him completely and asked him to return and begin the tasks of the field. Juan goes back to Comet and observes that the thick fog was covering the whole field. So, and without fear, he decides to cross it, but his horse was a little scared. It was difficult for Juan to make him move forward. When crossing the fog bank, Juan sees that a white circular object was landed on the ground, and as I said in the original report, he thought that he was seeing like a tractor. He never said the word UFO, ship, spacecraft, nothing. And I want to highlight this because Juan, throughout the experience, he always thought that he was seeing something that was familiar to him. So what happened after was that a gate opens and a tall being looks out and invites him to go up. A ladder descends from the ship. Juan shyly approaches with his horse, gets off a Comet and ties the stirrups to the ladder.
Now, what did these beings look like?
Well, the tall being was wearing something similar to an armor with a helmet. It was the color was gray, and he also had like a big tube that was in the area of his mouth, a very big tube. Juan thought that it was something for breathing. And then when Juan enters when he climbs up this ladder, he enters this space, this ship, and he saw that it was a very strange thing for him because on his left arm, he observes that there is a small being, a meter and a half tall, and this small being was cutting meat on a table, and instead of hands, he had scissors, and instead of foot, he had wheels. So he was cutting meat, but this small being ignores Juan the whole time. And on his right side, he sees this tall being, about 3 meters tall, and he was watching some monitors and making hand movements as if he were typing on a touch screen. A very important detail is that in front of Juan there was a transparent wall, something similar to an electromagnetic field, and Juan tries to cross the wall with his hands, but he can't. On the contrary, the small being moves from one place to another without problems. The thing is that this wall was like preventing Juan to go from one place to another. He wasn't able to cross it and go into the space of this being. He was only able to see what was happening, like he was in a zoo, seeing some animals or some beings, but he wasn't able to touch them, etc. So what happened after was that suddenly the gate begins to close and Juan is scared because he's afraid that his father will challenge him for being entertained. He quickly gets off the ship and sees that his horse was injured because he hit the ladder. So the tall being appeared next to Juan and Juan asked him for help. Suddenly, the tall being begins to squeeze Juan's arm and scratches him. Well, I need to stop here because two things happen. If we see the original reports after this tall being starts to squeeze his arm, this tall being gave to Juan his glove, one of his gloves, and as a gift, because the tall being told Juan that this is a gift in order to others to believe him, that what he saw was real, that this entire experience was real. But as you saw in the movie, this never happened because we had a lost memory in the middle of this part. After that, Juan started to have this scratch. He had, let's say, a vision that it's related to one of the questions that Juan was asking to this tall being, and it was, why to me? Why are you doing this to me? Why to me? And then Juan had a vision, let's say vision, because we don't know what happened to Juan. I don't want to say what he saw because it will be like spoiler, but it was something, what he saw was something very powerful for him, very emotional, that we had to stop that regression. The regression lasts 2 hours, and then Juan broke down. It was something very powerful for all of us, and then we had to stop it. But after that vision, the other event will be like this tall being giving to Juan the glove, and then Juan will go back to his house, but 20 meters prior the arrival of Juan, 3 lights were going out of this spaceship and Will took the glove before Juan could enter his house. And well, what happened after is that Juan tried to explain what he saw with his family and started to have a little bit of mockery from everyone.
Now they also had I guess a town conference where they were trying to get him to tell his story, and he couldn't, right?
Right. It was some years after. I think it was 6 years after he tried to explain for the very first time in the general audience, and he wasn't able to explain what he saw because it was really hard for him. He thought that no one was going to believe him, so that's why he was trying to deal with himself, trying to break that barrier, and he was not able to.
Now, one of the most compelling aspects for me was there were 3 other incidents around the same time and area that happened. Could you talk about those?
Yeah, though those um, that thing was thanks to Jack Ballet, because while I was writing him, he told me that, do you know that there were 3 other cases in the same area in the same week? And I said no. And then he gave me his original reports. And it took me a while to get those witnesses, because one of them was like, he he was living pretty, so it was living like 6 hours away from his original hometown. The other one, I so what happened was that these other cases, I could record 2 cases. The other one was, he passed away, so it was difficult. And one of the cases was Carlos E. Leon. He was the carpenter of the home, this town, and he was 21 by that time. And what he saw was 7 ships on his right window, because he was driving his car. He was returning home. He was in the route, and in his right window he saw seven ships. Some of them were landed, the other one were still on the air, and his car engines stopped, so he was really frightened. And then he ran away as the way he could. And the other case was Roberto. He was 18 by that time, and the same thing. He ran away immediately after he had the contact. And as I said in the movie, Juan was the only one who was not afraid of what he was seeing, and he also wanted to have a contact with that thing.
Now, you said after the incident, he had psychic abilities, and he would have, I guess, premonitions in his dreams. Could you talk a little bit about that? What kind of dreams was he having afterward?
Where there were mainly dreams about accidents, about death from his neighbors, from his family. And this aspect, the dreams aspect, were the true nightmare for him, because I thought that he was traumatized, but by the encounter that he had. But that wasn't true. The encounter was something important for him, for sure, but it wasn't traumatic. The traumatic part came after the encounter, this event, because Juan started to have these dreams that, as his own words, he said that they were more real than our reality. He said, like, if he go to sleep on his right arm, he will enter a real dream, more real than our reality. He said, Alan is more real than this. It's way much more real. And if he go to sleep on his left side, he will he will have like a normal dream. So while during the night he wanted to move quickly, because he really doesn't want to have this kind of dream, because it's really hard for him to deal with an accident that it's going to happen. And sometimes he prevented some big accident. So he was a hero on at least two episodes that he told me. But the rest of them there were accidents that he wasn't able to prevent them. So that's the reason why he was living on a hell, because he was able to perceive or to see the future, the near future, because these events, most of them happened 3 days after, or 4 days after, or a week. um, he was not able to stop from happening.
I want to go back for a second. I almost forgot to ask you about the horse. Now, the horse was injured. How did the horse get injured? And am I right in saying that the horse actually died after?
Yeah, he died 24 hours later. A day after he died, and as Juan told me, this horse Comet was kicking to the ladder. So he got injured probably by kicking the ladder, and 24 hours he died. And there is also one detail that I forgot to mention that it's not in the movie, that 2 days before the contact, two cows were mutilated in his farms. And this is not there was a big wave of mutilated cows in Argentina, but this was in the 90s. But his case was in 1978. It was really rare that cows were mutilated on the farms. So it was very strange. And remember that Juan also saw a small being cutting meat on a table on this kind of ship.
Now, Juan also had a mark that's still on his arm from the incident. Is that right?
Yeah, on his right arm. Um, this mark he still have it, but now it's very small. But yeah, he had for all his life he had this strange mark on his right arm.
Uh, Tell us how you got involved with Jacques Vallée with this film. And it's amazing the transformation you see after Jacques comes and meets with Juan again.
Well, I think the appearance and the participation of Dr. Jacques Vallée was a truly gift for me and for the movie. Um, I wrote to him because I wanted to interview him on San Francisco because he lived there. I knew by that time that he had a very low profile. He doesn't like to be present on shows or movies. And I also knew that he met Juan in 1980 when Juan was 14 years old, and he also wrote in one of his books, Confrontation. There are some. I think there were 4 pages about Juan Perez case, but I didn't know that he would remember that case. So I wrote a letter telling him that I was doing this movie about Juan Perez case, that Juan was not good. After the encounter, he lived remotely in the farms, in different farms all over Argentina, that he was living a truly hell. He was asking himself why this happened to me. He also had premonition dreams, and my goal was to go to San Francisco, ask you some questions about Juan, about what do you think about this phenomenon. And then I sent this letter, and 1 month after I got his response saying that he was truly sad knowing that Juan was not good, that he couldn't integrate his experience in a good way. And after that, he was telling me that I can go to San Francisco, that he's willing to participate in my movie. And I say, yeah, I got it. And then I kept reading, and in the final part of this email, he said something like, Alan, I don't want to interrupt your project nor bother you, but I have an idea. Tell me, what do you think? I'm willing to go to Argentina to stay with you, to stay with your crew, and to help Juan. We can help Juan to heal or to get or to gave answers to him, in order to relieve from his pain. And I'm reading that it was like living on a dream, because having Jacques Vallée for a whole week staying with us, it was a truly gift. And another good detail that he did for this movie, and also for 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 Juan, was that since this letter till the moment that he came to Argentina, he studied for 6 months Spanish, because he he wanted to talk with Juan without intermediates. That's the reason why he speaks a little bit of Spanish in the movie. But when the cameras were off, you we were able to see Juan and Jack walking around, talking to each other without intermediates. So it was quite special.
Yeah, you capture the remoteness of the area so well, and it is just it seems like he would have sort of such a lonely existence with him and his pets and his animals, and no one to talk to about this. And you can definitely tell the sadness in the beginning whenever you first start working with him.
Yeah, I tried to portray his own soul, his loneliness, and also tries I try to make a progression or a transformation during the film, because it's not the same point in the beginning of the movie, and at the end of the movie you will see that Juan was started to feel better with himself.
Now, you also went to Paraguay to speak with shamans about Juan's experience. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And you also, were able to show Juan a little bit about what you talked to them about.
Well, one of the inner questions that I had during this project was if there is a connection between the lineage of these contactees and the UFO phenomenon. That was one of my questions. And Juan, as a gaucho, has indigenous blood. So the Guarani tribe are one of the most important indigenous cultures in South America. So the first step that I took with this project was that I went to the jungle, I went to Paraguay, and I met 3 shamans, very from a very close community, because they are not used to speak with white men. And I went there because I wanted to have their opinions about the UFO phenomenon, about the abduction phenomenon, but also I wanted to have a message for Juan. The first journey, I went by myself, because it was more like an investigation rather than a shooting. And when I went there, I realized that I was in the middle of the shooting, because they started to speak. They were very open with me. They told me that they are willing to give me their secrets about the sacred, because for them the UFO phenomenon is something sacred. It's linked to the divine world, or to the spiritual world. And one of the things that I learned from them is they don't separate these phenomenons from their daily basis, from their daily life. For example, for the Guarani people, the dreams or the dream world is more real than when we are wake up. Our reality is not so much important for them. The dream world, it's like a second life for them. And for example, if you have an illness or a questions and you go to a shaman from this tribe, they will have an answer for you on the next morning, because he will dream about your questions or about your issue, and then he will to give you an answer. And it was a great detail, because in some way, what Juan had was the Guarani gift of clairvoyance. For the Guarani people, what Juan had, it was like a gift from them, from the Guarani tribe. But Juan didn't know that. He didn't know that the Guarani people had this kind of tool or gifts, because the only person that was his guidance or his guide was his grandfather. And his grandfather passed away when he was 10 years old. And then 2 years after, he had this contact. And the answer that he had this contact for grandfather Francisco, one of the shaman, was that Juan was trying to ask to seek for himself. He was searching, trying to get answers from the spiritual world, because he wanted to know where his grandfather were, why this happened to him, what is life, what is death. He was seeking to himself, and he got an answer from the spiritual world, as grandfather Francisco told me, but he wasn't able to decode what he was seeing. But for 40 years after, now he was able to get all the pieces together and get conclusions about what he saw and why he had that experience.
I found it interesting the way the elders were describing that these beings could sort of appear to whatever you needed to see them as, or whatever they chose to appear. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's sometimes it was really hard to understand what they were telling me, because indigenous people, and especially shamans, they speak in a very unique way. They speak in symbols, in an abstract language, and we as Western, we see everything in, like, we try to get the information in a logical way, but they don't speak in a logical way. They use another kind of frequency or way to speak or transmit information, and especially this kind of information because it's linked to higher realms. One of these shamans, Plutarco, said that these beings are linked to our world, but they are in another kind of stage, or let's say dimension. They are very close to our reality or to our world, but in a different frequency. And sometimes people that are quite pure or innocent are able to see those things, or the supernatural world, or this realm that is really close to our world. The other shaman, Sylvia, the wise woman, the other thing that she told me is that this phenomenon has two phases. The phenomenon can be linked to the, like, let's say, goodness or the good world, or to the evil side. And the way they appear, it's quite similar, but you have to be able, as a human being, you need the tools in order to confront that phenomenon and ask them or demand them to show the real thing of what are they hiding, because he was saying something like, for example, yeah, I have this cup, but behind this cup I have this pen. This is the real shape of the phenomenon, but he will be like covered by this cup. And what she was telling me that is that, for example, if she sees this phenomenon, she will like sing, because she has the tools that she has. The singing is like a weapon. She will sing to this thing in order to reveal what is behind. So immediately after, she will see this, and she will know what this represents. So in a way, she was telling me that this phenomenon is something quite similar to an holograph. It was a holographic phenomenon that remembers me plenty of book of Dr. Jacques Vallée trying to explain his theory about the multidimensional or interdimensional aspect of this phenomenon.
The first time it seemed like in the movie Juan had a glimmer of hope was when you were showing him the video of the tribal people, and he just, the look in his eye completely changed.
Yeah, I was really nervous on that moment, because it will be it. I knew that I had this footage on my hands, but I needed to find the right moment and the right time to share with him, and I wanted to see what he will think. And when I was showing to Juan that there is this, I was able to record that scene for the movie and for the audience, and Juan was like, he was staring at this at my laptop, and he was really froze. And I remember that the day after, during the morning, he told me like he said like something like, Alan, it was the first time in my whole life that I was able to dream without waking up terrified. Thank you so much for sharing me this message. Now I know that I'm not alone. And the other good aspect was that when he was seeing to Plutarco, for example, he told me that Plutarco had the same face as his grandfather, so it was quite familiar for him.
You had briefly mentioned earlier Dr. Nestor Valanda came and gave him a regression. Now, is that something that helped him along the way?
Yeah, totally. At the first time that I spoke with Dr. Nestor Verlanda, and I asked him to make this regression, because I wanted to know if there was some lost memories during about his case, about this encounter, and he was not quite sure if this will help or not, but he wanted to give a shot. And what happened was very strange, because this lost memory popped up, but it was quite strange because it was very emotional for Juan, and I don't want to give so many details about what he saw, but
right.
This technique was not hypnosis. I want to make this clarification, because it was more like a relaxation or a meditation rather than a hypnosis, because the hypnosis, it's way much deeper than the technique that Dr. Nestor Verlanda led, because the patient, after the regression, with this technique, he is able to remember the whole process. Juan was able to remember everything, and in the hypnosis technique, sometimes it's the patient is not able to remember. It's only in real time, and you have to record what the witness is seeing.
I have to imagine that was a big step in his process of healing.
It was. I remember that when he woke up, he was looking to everything in the room. He was feeling very strange because he was asking to himself at the end of this event he saw what he saw, and he told us, now I remember, because there were 40 years of not knowing that this memory was actually true. So it was quite surprising for him, and also very healing, because what he saw, it is related on one of the questions that I had, and also one of the pains that Juan was actually having. That is, my question was if there is a connection between the afterlife and the UFO phenomenon. And in some way, we can say that this question is actually answered thanks to the experience that Juan had. But for Juan, it was very special because he was able to know something about his family.
Now, towards the end of the film, you actually took him to Paraguay to meet these elders and these shamans, right?
Right. Sorry, one of my lights turned off. Okay. Yes, I took him to Paraguay because I wanted to reunite him to the direct roots, to his ancestors, the land of his ancestors, because all his Guarani culture was cut off because of the mixed blood that he had, what happened with America, with the Spanish conquerors, etc., etc. The indigenous, again, sorry, I don't know what's happening. Well, this thing happened during the regression. We had a very strange event that while Juan was talking to these beings on the shooting room, the lights that had batteries, they are not connected to the electricity, started to pop, like to flick. And the other strange event that happened was that everyone that was in the room and the room next to us fall asleep. Everyone.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, that was true. And the only two that we were not sleeping was Dr. Nestor Berlanda and myself.
Everyone just fell asleep at the same time?
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah, that can't be just a coincidence. That's amazing.
No, it was, yeah, it was something that we all speak about because it was very, very strange for us.
Now,
And sorry, you told me that about Paraguay, and
right.
Finishing that, I asked Juan if he wanted to participate of one of the most important rituals in the Guarani culture, that it's called Mitacaraí. And the Mitacaraí is a ritual for people when they are 12, because it's like a rite of passage. When you are 12, you are going to receive your inner name, because for them we all have two names, one exterior as Chris, Alan, Juan, Jack, and one spiritual name. And this spiritual name is your real name, and thanks to that name, you are going to be able to know your mission on Earth or why you are here. So that's why I wanted to go with Juan in order to Juan have this experience.
Did he was he able to speak with them about his experiences and encounters?
Yes, he was able. Yes, he was. But the most important thing for Juan, I think that was more than this, that more than sharing his experience, more important was to be with them, to talk with them about nonsense, and play with the child, and walk by foot on the water, on this ground, to touch the trees. While I was seeing him, I was seeing like a child in a playground, walking on the forest. It was very magical. It was, Juan started to feel that he returned to his home.
Now, Juan went through an amazing transformation throughout the film, but you actually came away from it with something different than you went into the film seeking. Isn't that right?
Totally, because at the beginning of this project, I wanted to make a UFO documentary showing another theories, trying to show, for example, the theories of Dr. Jacques Vallée, and only take the case of Juan as an excuse to show these theories. But I had to change my point of view when I was seeing this broken man trying to get answers about his experience, and then I realized that I had to help him, and the whole project changed completely, and the only goal was to help Juan get answers for him. That's why we got the help of shamans, a psychiatrist, Dr. Jacques Vallée. So everyone who was involved on this ship, our mission was to try to get answers to Juan, to help him, to relieve him from the pain that he was actually having.
Now, do you get the sense that his life is going to be very different now since he's had this experience?
Yes, I can guarantee you now that now he's back with his family, for example. Now he's living with his father, with his mother, with some of his siblings. Now he's not afraid from these entities. He also is after the movie, he also have some experience. He with his family, especially with his mother, they both saw some lights in the sky. His mother also told him, more than told, he confessed to Juan that she also had in her past a contact that it was the first time that Juan was able to hear that his mother was also a contactee, but it was very difficult to her to share this experience with her own family. So this thing was really a gift for me, because in some way it answers my other question, that if there is a connection between the lineage or the ancestry from these people and the UFO phenomenon. But this thing, you will see that in order to get these kinds of conclusion or details, you need to follow up during a very long period of time this witness. So the story, it doesn't end when the episode or this contact happened. it's just the beginning of this journey. So I hope that this movie can contribute in the UFO field in order to get another kind of approach to these witnesses. Because as Dr. Jacques Vallée told us, that there is so much to learn from them. We need to listen more and talk less in this kind of cases.
Yes, and it was a wonderful film. I enjoyed it very much, and it will be available October 22nd on all platforms. Is that right?
It's that right, Chris. It will be available on iTunes, Amazon, Google, Vimeo on demand, and you can check more information on our official website. It is witnessofanotheworld.com, and I'm hoping that everyone could enjoy this content.
Oh, I'm sure that will. It was a great film. And Alan, I want to thank you again for joining us at this early hour, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Chris. It was a pleasure.